Hello, everybody. It is Rocco, your boy, coming at you once again with another Age of Sigmar video. In this video, we're going to be talking about my time at the Nova Open. I went. It was great. It got moved from being in Northern Virginia, which is named after, to Washington, D.C., my part of the world. I got to go and hop on a bus and get down there. It was really nice and convenient for me. Though I will say, for a lot of people, it was a little rough finding parking, but the venue itself was fantastic. It was actually large enough to host everybody. It didn't feel like there were, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in one place for a tabletop wargaming convention. But there were definitely thousands and thousands and thousands of people in there. There were so many different tournaments and events and things, and I, at the very last minute, was able to secure, because it was all the events that I wanted to go to were sold out for so long, I was able to go and scoop up a ticket to the Grand Narrative. And we're going to be talking about here, was it any good? This compared to the tournaments I've done. And God, I've done GTs, I've done a lot of one-dayers and different things. And I'll tell you though, the fact that I am good as a Warhammer player is by dumb luck because of how much I love playing narrative. And that I don't always pick the hyper-competitive units and do all the things. And that's for my own personal stuff. But for the rest, if we go to a tournament, we ball out. We try hard because that's the environment. In here, we'll talk about what happened here. Now, what is the Grand Narrative and why should we care? For this was a 3-day, 5-battle adventure throughout the continent of Gork's Grin in Gur. This is the map made by the TOs, and all the stars on there actually go and correlate to different battle plans and battle maps and table setup. So we could actually, honest to the gods, to Sigmar, to Nagash, to Alariel, however you want, maybe Marathi even, we played a map campaign. We got split up in 2 teams, right? Because that Gork's Grin has seen a few different narrative events roll through there and lots of wars. And the most recent one, Be'lakor was trying to mess with the local denizens. And their Nurgle allies started a new plague called the Frucht Bar Plague. Fruchtbar space plague. That was particularly nasty and was focused around their holdings in the Forest of the Plague Lords and the Weeping Wastes. Also, we've got the link to World Anvil here. I'm also going to just throw, this is really more to remind me to put it in the description to go through all the deep lore that these people have wonderfully created and have been able to let dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of players go at it year after year in their playground, which has been really cool. We had, I believe, about 20 people. We had more. I think it was like 24, 26. We had an even number. It ended up being really fun. So we divided into 2 teams, whether you're for the plague, which led to a lot of chaos factions, supporting Nurgle, or if you were anti-plague, which actually wasn't necessarily all order, and we had destruction on either side that had their own reasons. Skaven and OBR were going back and forth on either side too. And we'll talk about my people in a second, what our motivations were. But it was really cool because, everyone talks about, oh, I wish me and my friends, we want to do a map campaign. We want to do like something where we have an impact on the world that we're gaming in. We want it to be kind of like D&D with our armies going around, getting different buffs and finding different objectives and, playing out our own little game of a war that is written about in a lot of White Dwarfs and different things from Games Workshop that really got us into this hobby as a kid. Well, a lot of these narrative events, whether it's for Age of Sigmar, Warcry, 40K had one where they were fighting through a whole solar system. These things exist and are at these events. It's not all just grand tournaments and trying to run the filthiest list that has an incarnate with whatever spell that makes it wild on purpose. No, it isn't always min-maxing on a battle plan in a General's Handbook. We did not use the General's Handbook. We had the core rules and then a specific battle pack for the narrative event made by the tournament organizers, which is really cool. They were able to go and take different battalions from GHB's past, put them in here, we could use them in our list building. It was awesome. So what did I play as? Who was I? My Deepkin, if you followed us for some of the stuff I've done with like the Animosity group, uh, I have the Umbra Venati Enclave, my Shadow Hunters from Olgu, originally, now currently in the Realm of Light, off in another continent with they got their own city called Ivasar City that they're holding for a lord that brought them on originally as mercenaries, then let them resettle there after some problems with the old Iron Rock Enclave when they sided with Marathi, because we don't like Marathi and her daughters. But what we're able to do here is say that the Umbra Venati Deepkin were hired again as a mercenary company on behalf of the people of Shoramir, the main settlement there, to go out and, through our lightning fast raiding, disrupt and go behind enemy lines. Right? We're looking for supply lines. We're looking to go and disrupt their beachheads. Anything we can to try to draw forces away from the city, from the grand siege that's going to happen, and hopefully push the forces of Nurgle and the Plague on the defensive so we could actually attack them and their holdings. So, some of the cool things too is every table had a counter that was it was a D20 dice that went and said how badly infected the area was with the plague. So we were able to go and, through our game results, affect the overall narrative. If Nurgle was ascendant, they were going to get more buffs. If we were able to knock them down on key parts of the area, we could debuff them or get buffs for ourselves in order. And every battle plan was custom. Not just was it custom, really cool terrain, but it was also custom battle plans, which we'll get into some of them in a bit. But my army, we were told we had a 2-list format here. Bring a 1,000-point and a 2,000-point list. What was suggested was you do a 1,000-point game in the morning and a 2,000-point game in the afternoon, evening-ish. But each round had about 5-ish hours to get your game in. And, we'd get there at like 10 in the morning. And then you could turn in your game, your second game as late as like 2 in the morning if you wanted to. Because there was always a tournament organizer or an event organizer in this one. They called themselves Neons for narrative organizers. It's a cool format. It allows you to take in the convention as well, so that you can schedule with your opponent beforehand. Where, like, cool, I'm gonna go do a painting somewhere with Vince Venturella from Warhammer Weekly. He's here doing a thing. I'm gonna go to this showcase. I'm gonna be demoing these games. I'm playing D&D or Pathfinder. We're having a game session later. Could we get this done earlier? And it was a little. I like a little more structure, but this had a lot of pros to why they did it this way, and I understand it. And again, I like it. I would have liked a little more structure myself, but here we are. Now, to go with that, we've got my 2 lists here. List on the left is a Futan, not Floodtide anymore, that part of the book's gone. Futan, Shark Battle Line. Because my narrative was that my Deepkin, again, being the lightning fast raiders, if they're going in light, they're going in heavy here and mobile. So I've got the King, Canna Maris, my Achillean King on Deepmare that has the bladed polearm, the Unstoppable Fury for the extra attacks when we're affected by High Tide. Then we have the Armor of the Sethai, which was so amazing for me throughout the game because naturally, a lot of people that were pro Nurgle were Nurgle players, and a lot of Chaos players have whether it's exploding 6s to hit or the disease points of Nurgle, where 6 to hit generates a disease point. My artifact actually stops that. Really, it's just my favorite artifact because I don't like Lumineth Realm Lords getting mortal wounds off on me with this army, so I just keep it on them at all times, and it ended up working out really well for me throughout the event. Also, the Void Shield Darkness mount trait in order to be giving out an aura of -1 to hit. Astra of Atriamento is the name of my Tidecaster that also knows the spell Counter Current. It halves runs and charges. I've got 3 Alapexes, and they are in a Bloodthirsty Shiver. And then I've got a unit of 3 defensive Ashlean Eels that were just fantastic pinning pieces. And again, this is my Achillean raiding party here. And the full army is using Nautilor, the turtle subfaction, because you know Shelly Baby Girl and me go way back. We've got the King, we've got Astra. I threw in Lotan as well for the +1 to wound aura. 3 defensive eels, 10 Namarti thralls with the infantry. You can actually see them in the picture in the bottom left. We've got Shelly the turtle, 3 sharks. Actually, this is a really good picture of my army that I picked. I did better than I thought. And you may be wondering, what is that big rock thing in the middle? So what, and I've got better pictures of it later, don't worry. What it is for the narrative event, they asked us to say, hey, if you want, you can make a custom terrain piece. We will give you rules for it throughout the event. And you could choose it to do a bunch of passive buffs. It also lets you, if you don't normally have faction terrain, or even if you did, they put cool rules for it. Like mine was once per game for a whole battle round, I could do one of the tides in the table. Now for Deepkin, remember, we've got the first battle round is the tide where your whole army's in cover, except for the turtle because it can't get cover. Second battle round is run and charge or run and shoot. Third battle round is always strikes first. Fourth battle round is retreat and charge or retreat and shoot. Fifth battle round, cover again. What I could do with that terrain piece is, for units within range of it, you can choose one of the round effects in addition to whatever the current round is, which came up a lot in my games. And then it also gave like passive buffs. Like I could have chosen for it to be +1 to casting, unbinding, and prayer rolls. I could have gotten a 5-up ward from it. Or what I mostly did throughout the week was I would sacrifice those buffs and use it to try to cleanse the table of either a point of disease on the table, because there's a big tracker and it's a whole war we're fighting here. Or on day 2, D3 points could be removed from the table. Got a helicopter flying over me. Wonderful. So, again, and you may be going, Rocco, you've got a 1-drop battle regiment there, but I see your 3 drops on your big list. So, I did it up with War Scroll Builder here, but because it was the custom battle pack, I was able to use the one of the battalions from one of the older general's handbooks where your infantry could count as 2 models instead of 1 when contesting an objective, which I threw my Thralls and Reavers into immediately because I missed that battalion so much. And my unit of 20 archers became a unit of 40 for considering if they owned an objective or not. It was fantastic. I think more battle packs for events should do this. It's not like where we do different editions and like in an RPG setting. We have different generals handbooks we could be using and drawing from that are just cool. Here's the battle pack. It's in this general's handbook. We're using this one. This is it. We've got the scenarios and we go. I feel like the team here did a fantastic job with it. The 3 TOs were Matt, Justin, first time TO Connor, who, again, it was very nice how everything got run around here. So how are the tables? Extremely thematic and cool. Now, you see a lot on Twitter and stuff. It's like 6 kind of like meh terrain pieces you can't even hide behind, and then the shooting army just shoots you off in a tournament setting. Again, we had a whole freaking volcano that was at one point strip mined for the Varanite, and it now is extremely unstable, so the 2 sides are trying to fight over it. One side was trying to blow up the volcano so it would erupt on the city, Shoremir. The other one was trying to stop it and prevent it. Then we've got Carl's Folly here, which was a redoubt set up in the wilderness by some of the forces of order, trying to establish a beachhead in Gorksgrin against um, the machinations of chaos. And underneath that is a Skaven Undercity as well, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, round one. Here's my first game. We go, again, we're the Raiders. We're striking deep into enemy territory here to try to relieve pressure from our allies in defending Shoremere, the capital city of Gork's Grid, where it's kind of like a Tortuga of sorts, like from Pirates of the Caribbean, where just every race is a melting pot in there, and there's no fighting allowed in the city, so everyone kind of gets on okay with a little animosity. But when they're all threatened, they're all band together to go and fight. And so to get through there, we have this wonderful Dark Souls horror-esque Silent Hill kind of terrain of this plague forest. And I was going against actually a local who we haven't actually played each other in a tournament or anything. His name's Scott, where I got to bring my Deepkin, and he brought two different Skaven armies, and I rolled to see which one. I got to choose my own adventure. And his narrative was he had two rival Skaven warlords, one from Pestilence, one from Molder, trying to outdo each other to see who's going to be the top rat. And I rolled Pestilence to be my first opponent. And again, a lot of plague monks. We had the plague censor, lots of censor bearers, the vermin lord, warbringer, and it was a very interesting map because the rules here, right? You see all these wonderful terrain pieces. There's, follow my mouse here. We got like three. Count these two is actually one big one. So we've got basically 9 major terrain pieces that we're fighting over. Lots of helicopters tonight. My goodness. 9 major terrain pieces that we're fighting over, where in order to claim the objective, you had to sacrifice wounds to it, right? To either purify it or to corrupt it. And if you did, you would end up reducing, like if a Reaver died, I went from 20 to 19 Reavers, then that unit would be permanently reduced to 19 models. I couldn't rally the model back. And what would happen is if you're going to contest objectives, you had to each silently, like write down a number. How many wounds were you willing to sacrifice? Whoever sacrificed the most wounds would get the objective. So what ended up happening is also, if a unit fully died, you could once per round in one of the hero phases, if I remember in this night, it might have just been your hero phase, but in one of the hero phases, you could go and bring a unit back from the dead. And it had to be, actually, it just had to be outside of 9 of enemy units. You could pop up. So that way hordes were generally favored in this, but, hold on. But, we'll talk about what's going on here. All right, we're back, and the helicopters are mostly gone. So what ended up happening is I outdropped my opponent. I got to give away first turn, and I was able to take my wounds on the terrain pieces on my sharks, my 8 wound models that move 14 inches, have the harpoon shot. Everyone had the harpoon launcher, so for 4 shots, 3s and 3s, -1 red, D3 damage. And then I had the turtle with Shelly's 8 harpoon shots, and I was just a shooting army that also happened to be good at melee. And I was able to use my special terrain piece to, in my first battle round, let my unit of Namarti Thralls, that you see in the back of my board there, to be able to run and charge up. And I was able to be extremely aggressive thanks to my narrative terrain piece and put the pressure on the Skaven early. And also a lot of the times where if we were going to contest an objective, I wouldn't bet anything. My idea was, well, cool, he's going to go and sacrifice himself. I'll just kill him off it. And then in my turn, after he came in on me, I'll kill him off it because now he just gave away 9, 10 wounds. And then I could just sacrifice like one dude or a wound off an eel or a wound off a shark and still keep my momentum going. And in the end, the Deepkin got a major victory, and we were able to kind of strand the forces of Nurgle from their supply base in these woods. Because our raid was so successful, it's like we came in down on the rear guard, almost in like a freak, using a freak storm from my Tidecaster to be like a hurricane that ended up striking there and catching the forces of Nurgle unaware. And we were able to get a good amount of the corruption, jokingly, like we were using the water like a power washer to scrub the forest clean of Nurgle filth. Also, I love the second picture I have here at the frontal face there of like my Lotan conversion with my baby turtle because we're Nautilar. I don't need no octopus. I got Sheldon the turtle. My Reavers there, and then my Tidecaster in the background, in the pool of blood of my beautiful terrain piece. And also, if you're new to the channel, my Deepkin are like a black and white horror movie theme with red as the spot color, something similar to not that it's a horror movie, but Sin City. Where we're going with this. Now, round 2. Again, another very fun, cool, inventive battle plan. This one actually, I remember this one was made by the new T.O. Connor. He was a little nervous about it. You also see my dice tray there. I got Nurgle properly this time, and I moved into one of their next highest corrupted areas. As I'm hitting all these sweet spots. And this battle plan, there are 4 objectives in the corner of the map. You can see them as these big orange crystals. It's just cut off in the bottom right by my camera for my picture. And we, again, you're like, oh, cool, this is weird, you're playing this. But in the middle, there's an orc army, John. You're playing Nurgle here. And you're Deepkin. Why is there a Cruel Boy army? Well, in the middle is a fighting pit of the Cruel Boys. The Cronenbog, if I remember right. So each player walked in has a champion riding one of the trogs, right? And they're going to fight each other out. So what you do is at the end of each battle round, you see who owns however many objectives. There's 4. And then depending on how many objectives you own, you give your fighter a different set of buffs. If you own 2 objectives, you give your guy +1 to hit. If you own 3 objectives, it's +1 to hit, +1 to wound. 4 objectives, they also get an extra rend on their weapons. And they had a really cool fighting profile, and they kept the rule of that break a boss where you can take D3 mortal wounds to yourself to give you extra attacks on your club for the Trog. And this one had a second wrinkle in that everyone that's playing in the event can bet on who they think is going to win. If you bet correctly, it doesn't have to be your teammate, but if you bet correctly, what can happen is you will get an extra triumph. And if you bet wrong, you lose your first command point in your hero phase the next game you play. Now, I was playing Nurgle, which are generally a pretty good counter into Deepkin with their mortal wound output with the disease points. What ended up happening here is we did a 1,000-point list. And it was my raiding party. And I was able to, so my Nurgle opponent had 2 Blightlord flies, a unit of 10 Plague Bearers, a Sloppity Bile Piper as their general, and a brick of 10 of the Blight Kings. I had my 3 sharks, my king, my foot wizard, and 3 eels that you could actually see everybody in the pit. The wizards here, eels are there. The deployment was corners, so they were there around this objective. I was here with my objective off camera. And I was able to, again, being a 1-drop, I gave away first turn to my opponent. And they, their name's Max, split their forces up. I'm very speedy, especially compared to Nurgle, so I wanted to see which way they were going to go. And, they had the flies go this way, with the Plague Bearers backing them up. there was a Sloppity around here, and then these Blight Kings. Everything's a plague, right? The Blight Kings moved up to claim this objective. What I was able to do with my sharks and my shooting here was I shot, do what you should do. Shoot the officers at the outset of any engagement. If I've learned anything from any kind of historical movie, a la The Patriot, shot Sloppity Vile Piper dead, and charged in my whole army to go and fight the Blight Kings. Now, this is where I went, oh, hey, wait. It's my thing is effective for the whole first round with my terrain feature. So, having a bunch of them run and charge and run and shoot, I could actually get into position with my king to make sure I can deliver home a good charge and use my king's ability to have an always strikes first for D3 units in a next combat phase for a turn really be helpful. And then I had my eels go on the very important mission of pinning those flies in place so that eventually Max would have to reinforce them there and get away from my sharks so I could try to steal Max's home objective with the speed of my sharks, hopefully by just retreating if I didn't clear the Blight Kings out. And they're 4 wounds each on a 4-up save, and Nurgle has an army-wide 5-up ward. And the leader of the Blight Kings has an extra wound, so they're very tough when there's 10 of them. And that's 500 points of 10 Blight Kings, and I'm putting in... that's half of Max's army in a 1,000-point game, but I'm putting in 4 of my units that are about 700-ish points of my army to try to fight 500 Max. That is a rough go if I don't do this right. And fortunately, as you can see, I eventually did wrest control of that objective, and my eels went nearly even with the 3 eels went nearly even with the 2 flies. These with the mortals on them, the Blight Lords. And I left 1 fly on 2 wounds when Max got through my eels. But at that point, I had won the fight down here in the center around this big crystal, which again, really cool that how all this was made. And by round 2, my breaker boss ended up winning. So, because here's how this went. So the first round, we each had 2 objectives, so we each had +1 to hit. And you can't attack the other boss, you can't put aura buffs, you can't all-out attack or all-out defense. It all is based on how many crystals you control. So it was even 2-2. My boss ended up losing 9 wounds. I made some clutch armor saves. And then Max did really good saving the rider of mine, trying to attack them. But my 3 damage club ended up coming home and coming in clutch. And left the enemy champion with 4 wounds left. Going into the second battle round, I was able to peel off one of my sharks actually and retreat and get Max's home objective, giving my fighter +1 to hit and +1 to wound. And Max got really desperate, decided to take D3 mortal wounds and took 2, leaving their fighter on 2 wounds. But you don't bracket, which is the really cool thing. So with extra attacks, Max's fighter ferociously charged in this duel, and unfortunately, when the dust settled, my fighter in the white armor struck down the Trog in the red, and we were victorious. This is a really cool win condition. Whereas the first game was more just hold more objectives and score battle tactics and such. And also, we had a custom list of battle tactics through several generals' handbooks that we got to play out of with this, which is really cool. And this ended up with a win. And the funny thing is, that first round, my team anti-plague here, team #vaccine. We had a bunch of jokes with that throughout the weekend. 2 of us won our games in the first round. So going into round 2, my team was feeling beat. Now, I'm trying to cheer them on and go, "Oh, we're gonna get this. We're gonna do good. Let's go." Most of my team actually bet on Max to win. So when I won the bog here. I won the fight. It meant most of my allies actually lost their command points going into the round 3 game. But I got a free triumph, which was neat, along with 4 other people that ended up betting on me. So now going into round 3 here, all right? We finally didn't get a Nurgle somebody. I was a little nervous we were only going to get Nurgle. And what we got? We drew Iron Jaws. We were fighting in a desert oasis. Now, what was really cool about this, one, the terrain, fantastic, right? Yeah, we had kind of an offset deployment going long ways. My opponent, again, I was able to make them go first. But the twist of this battle plan, because as you see, like there's scatter terrain, there's barrels, there's braziers, there's tents. You could garrison the tents in order to get different buffs and things, and you could capture the barrels and treasure chests throughout the map to go and try to loot them in order to get different buffs for your army. Now, a lot of them were one use only. There's a list of 13. If you do different things throughout the game, you can get bonuses to rolling on the loot table to try to get better loot. And the crazier thing about this was we didn't know what the objectives were because they changed round by round, as well as having random bonus objectives to score extra points at the end of the round. And some of it could be like, garrison a tent, take a barrel, take more barrels than your opponent, destroy the tents. And it was like, playing like a tactical, like an RPG or something where, it's like the objectives are ever evolving on the battlefield. Maybe even more like a campaign mode in like Warcraft 3 kind of a deal, Which, again, was a very cool and refreshing concept. We still played full games of Age of Sigmar. These were 2,000-point armies going against, player's name was Ivan. He was newer to playing 2,000 points. He usually played 1,000 points, but he piloted that list very well. That Maw Crusher was very scary. 2 units of pigs, Maw Crusher, a big unit of brutes, which ended up coming in handy because only infantry models could garrison the tents. And also, whatever the weird shaman is for the Iron Jaws, and 3 of the guys with the sticks, the War Chantas, with the different beats, and to give out the extra damage buffs, and a 3d6 charge buff too. So it was a very highly competitive Iron Jaws army versus my mixed arms Deepkin that I like playing. Also, too, if you've been watching, this is pretty much the same army I brought to a tournament I played, a charity tournament last October, and this is the expanded army of what I brought to Adepticon this year. So for that team doubles, we had a narrative as a side thing, but this is them in their prime, fighting over a desert oasis. A freak desert storm sent the Iron Jaws into the camp, taking cover, and it was an absolute bloodbath of a game where, the fact that all the objectives that we needed, all the things we needed to do to score points changed each battle round was awesome, honestly. And again, scoring points by garrisoning in the tents. At one point, we were destroying the tents on top of our opponents. Score bonus points. We got all the barrels and treasure chests and little grubblies very early on. And I had a very dramatic comeback win that ended up with me tabling my opponent. But let me tell you, the initial charge of the Iron Jaws happened round 2, where at first we were kind of jockeying for position. They came in. I lost 2 of my 3 sharks and my unit of eels. and my archers were able to put 6 or 7 wounds onto the Mega Boss on Maw Crusher. And thankfully, they were in range for the ward save from my boat terrain piece, because I still also got to use that. My opponent, as you can see the picture, made a very cool skull. It was like a god beast heart and rib cage got calcified and turned into rock, because they were the Blood Rock clan. Um, and they were able to, again, first off, it's a really cool terrain piece that he built, and they were able to again just come in and aggress on me. Thankfully, I was able to, for my custom terrain piece, the blood coral there, I gave myself the ability to have always strikes first on for battle round 2, and then I got it normally in battle round 3. And at this point, the ranges of the auras from the terrain pieces got larger for both sides because of all the events going on with the plague and all the grand narrative going on. And we were able to withstand the storm. My Achillean King got into his Maw Crusher. I ended up dying round 3 because I couldn't kill it on the initial charge into 2. And we were able to shoot ourselves 3. We downed 11 of the 12 pigs. And then eventually, with the brutes in the tents in the middle, had full control of both tents. It came down to they had to start destroying the tents for objective points, which then exposed them. I was able to destroy some tents around them. And when the tents blew up, you had to make a test to see if they died underneath, like the normal, almost like for how Caradron Overlords does it with their garrison rules, or something similar to 40k. If like you're in a transport and it blows up, and I was able to crush several heroes, the unit champions, and I was able to just make a big comeback as the Deepkin swept across the battlefield. And the artifact I ended up keeping, because there's some several use things you'd use as you get it. There's others that you could keep with you through the battle, was a special set of armor for my Namarti Thrall champion. Her name is Umathil. She was in one of the Animosity campaigns, a gladiator and a champion. And she leads the Namarti contingent of this army, where the king controls the Achillean eels, the turtle, and the sharks, where they're my Forlorn Hope Battalion. And if you are a history nerd, you know what that means. And she was able to get an artifact to make her personal unit of the thralls -1 to be wounded, which came up greatly in the rest of my games. And again, ended up being like a 25 to 22 point score at the end of this. The other ones I was able to put some more distance in with the first game, with controlling objectives, and then because it was a 1-2 more battle tactic. The second one was sudden death on who killed who's champion, and this one was again more traditional scoring. There were no battle tactics at all in this one because there were so many moving parts, which I appreciated. And also, a cool thing was after each time we played the games, the TOs would go around looking for feedback on if different mechanics worked at the end, because they tested it, but there's only so much you can do when they don't own every army. So this was nice, and I was the only Deepkin player in this too. And next, round 4. There was a newer player by the name of David, who's out in Maryland, where I ended up talking to him with one of his games. He's not, again, playing for Nurgle, and he plays Nurgle, and he wanted to get a game in because I don't think he even knew I was a YouTuber, just knew that I was really knowledgeable on the game and he wanted to learn more. And what I needed to learn to do was take pictures, because we ended up playing a 5-hour game. Just because it was so much. So I was under the teaching aspect. I forgot to take pictures, but what functionally happened here. So on the right, you'll see that there are these columns with these colored tops. They're realm stone deposits. There were 8 on the map. What you could do is you would tow them to the central realm gate, which was controlled by Nurgle, and you could sacrifice them and send them off to get supplies to your side in the war effort. If you picked up one of these deposits of realm stone, you were half movement as you pushed, towed, carried them along to a minimum of 4 inches of movement with them. So armies like Nurgle that move 4 inches normally wouldn't get screwed over by the game, right? So I deployed again. It was more of a central deployment, but it was long ways. I was able to pick up a bunch of these. Now, also with this, because with I had Shelly right there, just drag one up, and if you brought it within 6 inches of the realm gate at the start of your next movement phase, if you still controlled it, you could deposit it in there for bonus points, 2 bonus points, in fact. And the scoring was score one, have control at least one of these objectives that moved. Control at least two of these objectives. Control more than your opponent, score your battle tactic, and you got 2 points if you blew one up into the realm gate. And also another twist, which caught me off guard, was there are 3 gnaw holes. And this realm gate, you could go into the realm gate to go out to the gnaw holes, or go from one gnaw hole to another and teleport around the battlefield. The twist was you just had to end outside of 3 inches of an enemy unit instead of 9, because narrative. And what ended up happening is my opponent used it to teleport a Glotkin all around my lines. Then all of a sudden, the Glotkin was pulling its weight in points and messing me up. And the reason I have the shark picture again, too, is because on my left flank, my opponent had another Nurgle player that had another block of 10 Blight Kings again. And I rinsed and repeated the process of sending the king and the sharks into them. They actually held out and denied me my battle tactic of an eye for an eye, because I left 2 alive. I also threw the turtle in there, and my man made so many ward saves and ended the combat with 2 6-up saves on the turtle fins. Because I'm not a Lar, I'm -3 rend. He gave all-out defense to that unit, which meant he was on 6s to save. And it was just ridiculously funny how good he rolled 6s and then 5s to ward. And again, the game went a bit back and forth. I was pretty able to control my objectives while having the movement to drop off the Realm Stone deposits. What came in clutch here were 2 things. One being that I had the -1 to wound artifact on my Thralls. And 2, my Thralls and my Reavers were in a position, because of the battalion, where they counted as 2 models instead of 1. I think it was like Galatian Veterans. Was the name. But that might, again, don't quote me on the name. It was the battalion where they counted as 2 models instead of 1. It's been a while since I played with that General's Handbook. I was able to outnumber my opponent, who brought, again, because it's Nurgle, a generally really elite army, as well as having 700 some odd points invested in the Glotkin. So once I was able to thin out my opponent's numbers, I was able to outnumber them, because once I took out the block of 10 Blight Kings, they had an objective. So I was able to steal that and then eventually run away with it so my opponent couldn't catch me. And this is actually the first game my turtle Shelly died. So way in the back, you see there's that a terrain feature there. Next to that was my opponent's custom terrain feature, which was a really cool plague tree, where he had garrisoned Fecula Flyborn. And she had, with her magic, had just been spreading so many disease points and doing so much, and was such a locus of control for my opponent, really holding his lines together. And I couldn't shoot her enough. I couldn't do enough. So I sent my turtle, who survived, because my opponent also had, by the way, so it was 10 Blight Kings, a unit of 5 Blight Kings, 10 Plague Bearers, Fecula, her bodyguard, one of the foot Nurgle heroes with an axe, not the one that gives out the heads in the throwing attack, the other one, and the Eighth of Void Pendulum. And through mortal wounds, took my turtle down from 16 wounds to eventually she survived on a wound. Thankfully, while he could roll 6-ups, when he needed to roll a 2-up to kill my turtle, he did not get it. And my turtle on her last wound made a charge into my opponent, and then she ended up getting Fecula Flyborn at the cost of succumbing to Nurgle's disease. And again, at the end of the day, um, Team Anti-Plague here, we were able to pull out the win. After 5 hours, actually, this is a 6-round battle plan. So we had to talk out the last round or two because I actually had plans. And we weren't planning on. We started early because my opponent needed to get back home to do something. And then he just got so into the game, and I got so into the game. We just kept playing. I'm like, "Are you sure, dude? You don't need to go." He's like, "Yeah, man, let's keep going. Let's keep going." And we had a lot of fun. I ended up winning 36-22 in the end. If I remember the score right. And it was a blast. Even if I did play my third Nurgle faction of the event. That's what you get when, you run in the other side's Nurgle. Everyone's going to want to play him. It was a lot of fun. And this is the end of day 2 here. And then we get into day 3, the Fated Siege. And how did our teams end up faring? And this was also one of the heaviest plague spots. I was able to reduce it. Not enough that it went from being like horrifically corrupt to completely cleansed, but reducing it enough that it mattered. And Team No Plague, Anti-Plague even, made an honest to God comeback to bring the games into parity, and we were able to, through different factions holding their ground, to be able to, and myself and several other factions, causing disruption on the Nurgle supply lines and bases throughout Gork's Grin, severely deplete them of a lot of their advantages they could bring in going into the siege. Game 5. So we were able to play on, it was a 25-foot long table of a siege battle. And depending on whose side was doing good, the attacker or defender was going to be picked. The attacker went first. They were able to Team Plague edged us out just a bit on the score-wise here, on major wins and such, to be the attacker. As the defender, we got to also have these walls. We could garrison the walls. You could sally out from the towers, like the one in front of my coral there, and also the gatehouses. If you could fly, you could just fly over the walls. And I actually, because I was really worried, because I paired up against a Khorne player. So how they worked this was, the Khorne player could get blood tithe points from the people next to them, like our game, and then the one next to us. We were on a far end cap of the wall. So it was 4 players total feeding blood tithe points to Khorne. And I know the gentleman, love a guy named Mark. He TOs an event called Dragonfall out in the Midwest. He brought 7 bloodthirsters, and the organizer gave him an 8th one to borrow if he needed it. And yes, they deployed 12 inches away. I was very nervous. And it was just like, okay, here we go. We're going to fight. If I cannot handle my business, there are going to be 8 bloodthirsters running rampant up and down my side of the city of Shoromir, and we're going to have a very bad time. My teammate next to me was playing Mega Gargants, and I'll be honest with you, where they had him set up, it was going to be very rough for him to actually be involved in the battle because his models are very big, and he could attack the walls himself, but unfortunately that would mean the opponent could get in. So that was rough. And how the scoring worked here was, it was kill an enemy unit. You got a bonus point if the enemy unit had 10 or more wounds. You could double that if they or times 2 the result if you killed the enemy in their territory. So for us, it went up to, you can see the back of the coral, so very near the wall. And for them, they were 12 inches away from the wall. And that's a lot of meat over there, man. That was, my immediate opponent had 4 bloodthirsters. One of them were Scarbrand, 2 slaughter priests, 2 units of 5 of the corn dogs, the Warcry Warband that was off of Karanak, the Flesh Hounds, and a unit of 20 Bloodletters. And garrisoned along the wall for me, I had each shark was in a different section of the wall to use their harpoon launchers to shoot, and I had a unit of my thralls I was able to put in the wall as well. Get that was a special deployment rule. We could deploy up to the wall, but our territory we're actually in the city. Um, and those were the thralls that are the -1 to be wounded, and when added protected by the king aura, we were doing really good. If we were garrisoned in the walls, we were -1 to be hit and +1 to our save. And if the wall section were to blow up from artillery fire or a monster bashing it down, we could roll a dice to see if the unit or models inside lived, and then set them up within 3 of the terrain feature. And I was feeling great up until I'm at corn. I've played against a lot of corn in my time. Them starting, they get a movement phase, and then I'm in charge range. It's going to be rough. The fact that prayers and stuff were double range due to magical effects from the narrative. We lost the volcano, so at some point that lava was going to be shot at the walls to mortal wound it down as an artillery piece. They had mortal wound cannons and such to specifically target walls. This is going to be rough. This is going to be rough. As you can see, the very first turn, my opponent decided to attack the walls, and we had a breach. It was whew. That corn force, man, was coming at me hard and fast. My sharks were able to survive. My thralls held that tower valiantly, and actually through the whole game never lost the tower. They never actually died. But another cool thing with this battle plan was to make sure that everyone still had stuff to play, because this game was scheduled from 1 in the afternoon to 9 p.m. or 9:30 even. Each hero phase, you could spend a command point to get a unit back, or then at one point they said screw that. It's just each hero phase you can get one of your units back to make, because there was just so much killing going on, and then summoning armies like Horde could just bring stuff back as they needed. And yeah, that was their first turn. The walls were breached. I had 4 bloodthirsters right on top of me, and to make the game go better, we were not doing priority rolls. We were doing the 40k style. You go, I go. So you get your turn, and then I get my turn. Turns for the attackers were half an hour, then half an hour for the defenders. If there was like a lot of combats and a lot of dice rolling, they gave us some leeway on that. But my opponent and I were both veteran tournament players. We would finish a round in half an hour, let alone a player turn. And it was a slaughter. For them, this is a picture from their side on the attackers here. My immediate ally with the Gargants also played on a table where it was a nest of Maw Crusher eggs, where you had to steal the eggs, and if you stole enough of them, a Maw Crusher would come down and try to kill you. But if you lived through that and won the game, you could get an allied Maw Crusher to help you out. And if you know the Maw Crusher War Scroll, they can issue multiple of the same command abilities to your units that are friendly. So I was able to unleash hell with multiple units. My opponent had to deal with us having multiple all-out defenses active on us if we were in range. It was crazy, and my opponents actually got an allied Glotkin to help them out too, if I remember right. And the big thing on top of the lava pit, that like it's a large base, but like there's nothing there. That was someone's Great Unclean One. It was a little nurgling on top, so narrative. And what happened with this, the clapback was I ended up shooting and killing most of actually the Bloodthirsters. You can see that there's a Bloodthirster back here. That I killed in my opponent's first turn, and that was them summoning one back. And then we went back and forth of me sallying out to try to kill their army and pin them back in their territory to score bonus points, and them trying to rush their way in. And I can happily say not one Core Knight model got any farther than just outside that breach. They never actually got into the walls. And here's a really good shot of the crazy siege with all the squigs there. And, you know, what team won? I will say, your boy balled out. I ended up killing 13 bloodthirsters and scored. I gotta probably double check my notes. It was like a 36-8 in my immediate table, right? My ally next to me won 18-8, and we could affect each other's games and stuff, but we generally couldn't, because we were just busy fighting for our lives from all the summoning from Corn in front of me to Nurgle to my opponent. But at one point it was a draw. And going into the 5th battle round, it was an honest draw. And then a lot ended up happening where we had another guy on our team score like 45 points. And we're feeling really good. Like, between the 3 of us, we've scored almost 100 points, if not more. Unfortunately, the forces of Nurgle ended up carrying the day, 188 kill points to 180. And unfortunately, most of Shoremir fell to the forces of Nurgle. Though, through my army's mastery of water and the hurricane that we could bring, and the Flesh Eater Court defenders, along with the Mega Gargants, we were able to save part of the city and sink a lot of it to form sort of a lagoon to make Shoremir the AoS equivalent of modern day Venice. And it was an amazing experience, everybody. I gotta say, it was a lot of fun. I would 100% do this again, especially when I heard the grand tournament ended up going to like 8 games or something you had to play in if you wanted all the prizes and stuff you wanted, all your ranking and everything. I'm just like, that's great for them. Playing 5 games. I still played like over 20 hours of Warhammer in 3 days. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot. At one point, my brain definitely turned off, and I just didn't even know what I was doing anymore. I was the Deepkin fighting for my life in the city. Like, highlights of that battle, I was able to force several bloodthirsters throughout the game to have to charge my archers that have the really good Unleash Hell, because they were right near the turtle. I was able to have 3 rounds of always fight first, because the first battle round I had the King Papa's ability. The second round I had my terrain feature, which now had an 18-inch within bubble to be affected by it. And third battle round was just my Deepkin rules. So I got to do a lot of filthy things because narrative, which have now led to I've gotten the Deepkin faction terrain nerfed, the special faction terrain. So I'll be working with the organizers on what would be a cool rule for Deepkin that wouldn't be oppressive. Because again, my opponent had fun. Everyone had a lot of fun. We even had a Stormcast player defect and fall to Chaos. So now they're converting up all their Stormcast that they use in this game to have Chaos accoutrement. Yeah, I'd do this again in a heartbeat. It was a lot of fun. Met a lot of good people. And, shout out to Team Plague. They barely got it. Barely squeaked one out. We'll get them next year. And it'll be fun to see what they come up with next in Gork's Grin, because almost all of the Plague lands in Gork's Grin, no, all of them actually did get cleansed of the Plague. The only thing affected by the Plague are the ruins of Shoremir that didn't get drowned and flooded to make the new Shoremir floating city. So I don't know what they're going to do next. I don't know. It might be the Revenge of Shoremir. or what, but I am very excited next year to go to Nova and find out and play in it and fight the war for it. And if you've been here for this long, thank you for watching. Please leave a like if you liked me talking about this. Subscribe if you haven't already. This is a very fun event. Look out for narrative events like this, because you don't get to do half the stuff we did unless you've got really dedicated tournament organizers. Shout out to the TOs, to Connor, Matt, and Justin. They did an amazing job. That was us all yelling "Wog" at the end. You can see me wearing my The Beast shirt. It was my the doubles shirt, my doubles team shirt I have with my wife. I'm the Beast. She's the beauty. And also several birthdays happened throughout the event, which is really cool. And yeah, it was an amazing event. Thank you all for watching. Thanks for listening to me talk about this. If you have any questions or things you want me to cover in future videos, again, please leave your comments down below. If you thought this was fun, leave a comment, say narrative. I don't know. Thank you all for watching. Be nice, roll some dice, and have a good time. Bye.